Hello. First, I just want to give you guys a little rundown of what I'm doing because it's not going to make sense otherwise. So, I'm making a program that edits the Skyrim initialization files, which is just some game that I play. And there's this really big file full of convoluted little settings, and you don't have access to any of those settings, but I think that you should because you can really fine tune your game that way. So, I'm basically just creating an alternative menu, more or less, for that game so that you can go in and change those files without having to learn like all like these little things behind it. So it's just like more clear and easier to use rather than going in and editing literally a raw text file. So this is my sprint 2. My name's John, and I want this week I wanted to add the ability to alter fade distances, change how or change settings so that the game shadows render differently. And I also wanted to add in all the settings found in the default Skyrim launcher. And I also wanted to go back and test some functionality. There are a couple of bugs in my last sprint that I was still trying to iron out, but um, there was this one really bad one that I had to fix. For some reason, the menu would only appear sometimes, and it would only appear in the debugger, and it would only appear in the debugger sometimes. So that was something that had to be fixed, and I finally figured out what it was. And it was, of course, just like a silly little mistake, as it often is in programming. Um, but yeah, overall, I am pretty happy with how this week turned out. I did meet all of my goals. I wanted to save time back things into the model later on in like my final sprint, since that's going to be basically like the whole core of like what I'm going to do there. Okay, so I want to hop into user facing demo. So let's boot up the application and you guys can see what I worked on. So as I showed you guys last time, we have a whole bunch of different tabs up here. So you have like the save and load, which they're all going to do the self-explanatory purpose that you guys can guess. So advanced is going to have like all of the like advanced or miscellaneous settings. Gameplay is going to affect gameplay. Graphics is going to handle graphical um, settings, and then under general, it's going to handle all of the settings that you would typically find in the default Skyrim launcher. Um, and I wanted to do this because I mean, even though it was like a little bit redundant and like you could find like a lot of these in like the default Skyrim launcher, I wanted to create like just like one hub for someone to go and edit the Skyrim game files. I don't want them switching between two different launchers, or excuse me, this isn't a launcher. I don't want them switching between like two different setting panes just because that would get convoluted and there might be conflicts. So it would just make a lot more sense in my mind and probably the user's mind to have one setting thing. So um, everyone's gonna have like a different screen resolution, so it makes sense for them to be able to uh, edit the width and the height. Um, Most people just play it in 1080p, which is what I have it set default to. Um, and later, I'm just gonna have all these settings be like snapped to just like the default Skyrim initialization file, rather than me like hard coding in like test codes. So yeah, I just wanted to put that in there to show that it was possible to do it and that it will like boot up when you go there. You also have checkboxes. Also, you guys can see that I did like a whole bunch of different J components. So I have the checkbox. I've got the text field. Um, just change a couple of these settings so I can go back a little bit later. Checkbox again, and then I also have the J slider, which is I thought was pretty cool. So I basically looked at like the types of variables that things were, and I went and I picked the appropriate J component for each item, so that it would make sense for the user. Um, so like all of like the fade settings, like they're on like a spectrum, but it's kind of hard to know how far really something is, like in the default launcher, because like objects was like 1 to 16, where specularity, or excuse me, light was like 1 to 35. So just by like putting in like a number like you would otherwise, like that gets confusing. So I just found that putting it on like a slider, it made so much more sense. Also, I wanted to show that you can switch between tabs, and then all of your settings are going to be saved. So if you're like cross-referencing something in like a different tab, or you just like want to look at like different settings, you can always come back to what you have in these. And I don't want to have like people be forced to like go and like save everything like at like the bottom. I just thought it'd be easier to like not worry about that until like you're finally completed like the settings that you wanted to change. So then you can just go to save and load, and you can save your thing, and then maybe like boot in like a different preset or whatever you want. So okay, that concludes the user facing demo. Now I want to give you guys a little code walkthrough. So like I said in my introduction, I did a lot of refactoring and bug fixes. Um, let's see, where do I want to start? So okay, this is like the main file, and then this is where basically everything's constructed. So the problem was, and I don't understand like why like my menu or like the J components would just randomly appear like in the debugger, even though I didn't actually set them to visible, but they wouldn't like be visible like when you just like compile it. Um, but now that they're not just sometimes visible, they're always visible because I set everything that needed to be visible to true. So that was fixed. Okay, now let's go to the general view, which is really like everything that I've been working on. And as you can see, I did a lot of work. This is probably more of an undertaking than I anticipated, but I'm having a lot of fun. I really don't mind putting in all the work to get this done. So I think I'm just gonna stay the course. I think I did pace everything pretty well, even though it is like a little bit more than I expected. So I used the grid bag layout, and as I mentioned, I used like a whole bunch of different J components to go along as well. So the grid bag layout took me a little while to figure out, but I guess like it kind of reminded me of HTML and CSS a little bit, so I was able to tap into those skills and like really make sense of it. Like I said, I really didn't do anything with the model this week because that's going to be what I'm going to do on my final sprint. I was thinking rather than just having everything be stored in like the actual like running program, I think I just want to communicate directly to a text file. I think that might actually be easier, and I could completely skip an entire step of the program. Um, I don't know if that actually makes sense in practice. I'm gonna have to experiment a little bit with that. But anyway, I just like want to scroll down and show you guys. So I have been following good coding practices for the most part. Like for example, rather than just having like one like mega method with like all these like components and everything in it, I decided to split it into 3 different methods that made sense in my head. And I'm probably gonna go through and do the same thing for every single one. So I have create the main options, which is like your width and like your screen height. The shadow options, which is anything that has to do with shadows, and then like the fade options is just like the sliders on the bottom. Um, let's see, the get general pane, that's just what the controller needs to reference in order to get access to this view. um, hmm. So yeah, I mean, I just went through it. Here you can see I set some default values. I'm going to have those be dynamically set by cross-referencing the text file that the user loads in. And I'm just going to have the user like set the default path like right from the start. And then it should just do it automatically from there on forward. As you can see, let's see. Uh, so I've been going through it. I've been labeling everything that I need to label to show like what everything is, because it is pretty easy to get lost considering how convoluted all this is. Also, I have been using like descriptive names. Um, yeah, I mean it's just your standard grid bag layout. I've been making comments. I've been using a whole bunch of different J components. I've been using separators to better differentiate my code from other blocks of code. Uh, let's see. Hmm. Yeah, so at first I just like added things like the default route to like the general panel, but like as you can see here, in addition to just like adding like the component, I also added the formatting, which is like the C that you see there, which is the grid bag layout constraints. Um, yeah, and I was also able to hard code in all of the parameters for the slider, since that's something that's just not going to change. So yeah, that's what I've been up to this week, and I hope you guys join me again next week. Take care.